So we'll allow for that little delay. Well, I think I've probably allowed the 30 seconds that Katie advised. So here we go. Off we go live again. And here I am back, Penny Ferguson, as you all know. I'm back on my end of the month Thursday conversations with, and I have to say, I think it's a year now that I've been doing this. I've absolutely loved it. And I've had the privilege to have conversations with some fantastic people, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. And I'm really delighted to welcome you to somebody that, I have to be honest, I don't know very well, although she's worked with a living leader for quite a while. But it's an absolute joy to meet you. So I'm going to allow her to introduce herself. Her name is Emma Banks, and I'm really looking forward to hearing her story and her journey. So Emma, over to you. Oh, actually, before you kick off, let me say to everybody, I do say this, or I forget to say it. It's really important for those of you who are listening that if you hear something that interests you, don't just comment, ask questions, because both of us love it when we get questions from you saying, I want to know more about this, or I'd like to know how you did that, or please do put in questions wherever you can. So sorry, having said kick off, I then interrupted you. Emma, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Penny. I do feel like I'm in the presence of greatness, having gone through the training program and watched all of your deliveries of all of the lessons. So I'm really looking forward to this as well, and to meet you. So just a bit of my background, I guess. I am currently the CEO of Ramarketing, which is a full service integrated marketing agency. We only serve clients within the supply chain of pharma and biotech. So to all intents and purposes, we're a B2B agency, but it's technical. And I'll track back now right to my early years, I guess, in terms of how I've ended up here. So I went to school. I was sent away to school, actually. I went to boarding school from the age of 8. I spent a lot of my youth, I suppose, away from my family, which I think creates almost a personality, I suppose, or a type of person who's likely to be incredibly independent and self-sufficient. And I think that's something that I recognize as a strength and sometimes a weakness. Through my education, I became very, very focused on wanting to be a medical doctor. So that was absolutely my commitment. I wanted to be a medic. And sadly, at about 17, my chemistry teacher told me that I wasn't going to be clever enough to do that. And it was brutal because I listened. I think it's that sort of self-confidence that wasn't there. And at the time, and this was quite a long time ago, medicine wasn't quite such an academic subject or an academic thing to study. And so there were many, many places you could go and not necessarily be an A-star student. But I didn't know that. So I pivoted towards doing a medical science degree, went to London, which I loved. It was great. It wasn't medicine, but came out of university into a recession, which is often, well, unfortunately, it does happen. We go through the cycles from an economic point of view, and we come out of uni into a recession. And I thought, what do I do? And I think because I still had almost a desire to prove myself, having been told that I wasn't smart enough, I chose to do a PhD. It probably wasn't for the right reasons, but I look back now and glad I did it. And I chose to go up to Liverpool to do this PhD. And the reason I chose Liverpool was because my boyfriend lived there. There was no other good reason apart from that. And it was an interesting subject, clearly, and I got a place. So I did a PhD for 3 years, and it was really hard. It doesn't matter how clever you are, I don't think. The level of resilience and determination you need to consistently repeat, and it was a science PhD, consistently repeat experiments, have them fail, try and work out what you do next. It's hard work. Did my PhD, got through it, got my doctor title, which I do think was part of that drive. It was part of I've got something to prove. And even when I spoke to some of my teachers sort of retrospectively, they were a bit shocked that I'd managed to do what I'd done, it's a shame, but equally, as with everything in life, probably a bit of a making of me, where I knew it gave me that sense that I could do it if I really set my mind to it. The lab wasn't my favorite place, but I did think I needed to decide one way or another whether I wanted to work in a lab for the rest of my career. So I did a postdoc and went back to London and ended up in the Royal Veterinary College. And my research was in sort of an equine virus, an equine infection. And during my formative years at school, I was massively into horses. Like, it was such a big part of my life. I looked after them, I rode them, I adored them, you know. And this postdoc tipped me over the edge, unfortunately, because of what I had to do, which I'll not go into now, what I had to do in order to be able to actually deliver the science. So came out of that and had to completely reassess what I was going to do at this point. It happened very suddenly. I didn't really have a grand plan. I had this PhD, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I started to train as an acupuncturist. And because, again, that connection with medicine, the connection with patients, the connection with things being holistic. And I'd come from such a scientific background where you were constantly trying to analyze why something was the way it was. Acupuncture was the opposite end of the scale, because it was very much about, this is the world we live in. This is who we are as humans. Don't overanalyze. Let's really, really listen to what people are saying and observe. And then you come up with a sort of treatment approach. It's Chinese medicine. It's quite philosophical in its background. And then I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But my husband and I decided to start a family at about that same time. And I had 3 children, 3 boys, and I had 3 under 4. And I think all of a sudden, this idea that I was going to have an unguaranteed income became a bit more frightening. So I then found a job doing data entry in clinical trials, in the sort of clinical world. And that was the bulk of my career. So I spent 20 odd years working in the data side of clinical trials. The acupuncture, I kept going for a while, but it did sadly fall by the wayside, because 3 children and a good, interesting, stimulating job was enough. So it's a shame. And occasionally the acupuncture needles will appear in a cupboard and I'll go, I should go back to it. But it would take such a lot of work now, I think, to retrain. I'd have to retrain. So yeah, 20 odd years in clinical trials. And the business that I ran, and it was a business I ran before Ramarketing, was up in the Northeast, up in Newcastle, which is where I'm based. And it was a very, very hard experience. I think, I decided I wanted to be a CEO just before I was a CEO, really. I never had a grand plan that that's what I was going to be. But I was driven very much by having some influence or control over my own destiny, just being able to have a voice and a stronger influence. And the business was, it was hand to mouth, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. We never really made money. We were a software company. We were pre-revenue in the later stages. We were constantly looking for funding. Mm-hmm. We were constantly trying to protect the payroll. I've been in a situation where a bailiff has turned up at our door and I've had to deal with that. That it was hard experience. And I was really motivated and driven by protecting the team. So ensuring that we would pay them every month. They knew what was going on, so they could make decisions for themselves about whether they wanted to stick with it. And I think that probably, I was at that point the expert in the room. So I was technically competent in the services that we delivered. But I think it's probably at that point where you go, actually, if we're going to prevail, whether we prevail in a profitable way or not, it is about people and about how we galvanize a team and get them inspired and motivated and help them make sure they understand what they're facing into, the good and the bad. And I kept going and I was very committed and very loyal to the team. And then I was approached at the latter part, the summer of 2018, by Raman, who's the founder of Ramarketing, to see if I would be interested in going to run the agency. And in my mind, I went, why would you want someone like me? I know nothing about marketing in terms of how to deliver it. And I've run a really technical business and it's been really hard yards, if you like. And he said, well, we want someone who's worked in the sector, because we work in the sector. And I'm going to the US, and I just need somebody who's able to kind of look after the business from an operational and administrative perspective. And I think I said to him at the time, I said, well, I don't really want an admin role. I don't really want a job that is just administrative. You know, I really would like to have more of an influence. Anyway, I went for the interview and got the job, and started at the start of 2019, and I just haven't looked back. And you know what's been brilliant about it, aside from the ups and downs of running a business and market pressures, is because I wasn't the expert in the room. The thing that I absolutely had to be the best version I could be of was leadership, because I wasn't the person who was going to answer the questions about how a client was going to activate a certain marketing channel in a certain area. I was there, or I am there, to make sure the team have what they need, and that they have direction and they understand what we're trying to achieve. And it was quite liberating, to be honest. It's hard because you question your value often, because we're very driven, aren't we, by being the brightest, smartest person with all the answers in the room. That's how we define value. Now, I appreciate there's more to it than that, but as you come up through your career, that's what you think. I have to be the one that speaks. I have to be the one that knows the answers. Whereas coming into this agency, I'm sitting there going, I don't have the answers, because actually I don't really know what you do. I know the clients you serve. I understand that world, but I don't know what you do. So I've had to learn that, because I have to know enough. But like I say, it's been liberating, because what is my job now? So yes, I've been there nearly 6 years. We've grown, managed through COVID, which was very challenging from a people perspective. We were really, really busy, quite a young workforce. Everyone went home, and people were working ridiculous hours because they didn't have much else to do. They were living in one-bedroom flats. Their partners were with them. I mean, I've seen people with their kids, you know, in the background, who don't understand why mum's at home, or, you know, whatever it is. Having to manage our way through that and deliver the work really challenged us. But I think we did a reasonable job. And coming out the other side, hybrid working is a massive part of who we are. You know, I can't imagine ever dragging people back to an office for military rule. It's, you know, I just think there's got to be a level of trust that the individuals in the team will deliver the work. So, and then we've done a private equity transaction with North Edge, which happened in early part of 22. Had a great year in 22, and then the pharma and biotech market had an absolute nightmare. So the last 2 years have really challenged us as a business, really challenged us in terms of our performance, financial performance. And again, it just keeps you on your toes from how do I manage my way through this as a leader of the business, and make sure the team have support and knowledge and understanding and transparency of what's going on. So again, having done Living Leader, very big on so they can make a choice. You know, it isn't about me telling them what they should do. It's about being open and honest about where we are, and supporting them in whatever decision they make. But I think things are beginning to look a bit more positive from a market point of view, definitely. So I think I'm hoping that 25 is a little bit more, I hate to use this word, straightforward. It's probably not the right word for a business that's constantly growing, but just perhaps a little bit more forward visibility of what is likely to happen, because uncertainty is really hard for teams to navigate. But I love this job. I look back on it now, and I think I really thought people thought I was insane to move from this very technical area where I understood it so deeply into something that was an unknown. Yeah, it's probably the best decision I made. So that probably brings us up to date.
Wow. I mean, what a story. Before I go on to ask you more questions about now and leadership, I'm fascinated and shocked that a teacher could say to you at 17, you're not bright enough to do that. What's your feeling about that now? Because I think that's shocking.
It is shocking. I think I'm sure, like I said when we were chatting before, that I'm sure it's affected the way I've thought about my own children in terms of their own dreams and aspirations. I should have said my husband's a teacher, and I think he does find this that our 3 children haven't gone to university. He finds that quite difficult, because if you're in education, that's what you're almost working towards. But my view has very much always been, you need to do enough to get you to the next phase, whatever your next phase of your journey is going to be. That's what you need to do, because then at least you know that you've kept the doors open, kept your opportunities open. But that doesn't mean you need, 5 A stars at A level. That means that you need to understand what it is you need to do. But absolute ability to engage with people from all walks of life. You meet someone at a bar, you can talk to anyone. The human skills that I think perhaps we're also put under pressure through COVID because everyone was online. I feel they're far more important than academic achievement. And although I do have a regret that I didn't do medicine, I believe I would have made a good medic. That is what it is. It was a point in time, and it took me down a path, and it's not that I'm unhappy now at all. Like, I love what I do, and I love the responsibilities I have, and the people I work with, and seeing them thrive. But I do think it did change my view on driving for that academic excellence constantly. Is it works for some people, it just doesn't work for others. And Jake, for example, my oldest, he for a period, and I think he might do this eventually, he really wants to be in the fire service. And I just look at him and I go, that is such a brilliant profession for you. And I appreciate that it can be dangerous and it can be challenging. But there's so much about that job, which is community and perhaps dealing with people at their time of need, that I believe he would be phenomenal at. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of that skill that he has. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, I think it must be at times hard for you not to look at that teacher and think, you changed the course of my life. You killed my dream. And that is tragic, because you then went on to do the PhD, which would have been, studying to be a doctor would have been no less hard than a PhD. PhD is probably even tougher. And you managed to achieve that. So did you ever go back and see that teacher?
No. I didn't. Yeah, I suppose you get to a point, don't you, where I just think I've moved on now. I'm as I say, yes, there's a small regret that I wasn't confident enough to push back on that, but actually I'm happy with the way my life has played out to date. So, yeah.
So it seems that you started really getting your head around the importance of leadership a long time before you met us. So what is it that made you decide to take it further and come and talk to us? Because you'd already got it.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. Yeah. First of all, we have the wonderful Paul Stobart as our chair.
Oh, I forgot that.
So he's been such a huge advocate of the program and was very keen for us to do the PLP quite early on in our time with North Edge. And I think I did my PLP nearly 2 years ago now. Actually, it was probably the start of 23 that I did my PLP, and 16 of us, I think, went through it at that point. And it was mind-blowing for me, because I had done leadership training before. I'd been in Vistage and had interesting people come and talk about leadership concepts. But the program that obviously the Living Leader run, in terms of the 2 days of intense learning and then obviously that follow-up day, it brought a lot of things together that we might all go, yes, I've heard of this before. But it's that brilliant thread, isn't it, of it being, first of all, dispelling the myth that leadership is only the responsibility of those people who sit in the higher echelons of life or a business, but also that these are life skills. This isn't just about work. It's everything. And it really resonated with me. And I do remember being quite overwhelmed by it and then thinking, how am I going to do this? Because, for anybody who knows Living Leader, when you do your Rackham communications behaviors and when you get first assessed, I mean, I was full on You can imagine, can't you? Like all blue and red. Like that's absolutely what I was. And it's a bit of a shocker. And you go, oh my goodness, this is my tendency to be blue and red. And then when we redid it, it was marginally improved. Like so it really shines, it puts a mirror in front of you and makes you go, oh my goodness, actually, I have, there are things about the way I operate that are, without realizing, detrimental to others. So I would say that we did the PLP, and then you go back into work, and Paul was great, because Paul then would come into the business and talk to us a bit more about it and try to keep it alive. But it's probably a big challenge initially when you've got so much to take on board. The things that I think since that PLP, before I did my training, the things that tangibly changed for me were appreciation. Like that was a tangible shift that I made a purposeful decision to be better at, which was making sure that I was acknowledging people for their contributions, how they made me feel, all of those things, because I wasn't doing it before. I was definitely a person who would always be looking for what do we need to fix, as opposed to really showing appreciation of people. And that now, what I love about it now is it's just part of what I do. I don't even think about it. So, but there's obviously other elements that I'm still working on. But it gave me confidence, tools, ways of thinking that have just taken the foundation of, I think that people in a business, and people, well, in life, but people in a business are the most important thing. That's what we need to focus our attention on. It dialed that up for me to say, actually, there are also now ways for me to have an influence over those individuals in a positive way that can enable them to be even better. So I wouldn't say I think I feel like we're still early on the journey with it, but I'm bought in totally to the approach.
Well, yeah, it'd be hard not to be with Paul Stobart as your chairman. I mean, he lives and breathes it, literally lives and breathes it. He is truly amazing. I mean, one of the things that I think, and I'd be interested to know what you think, I think if you're a really caring person and you enormously care for people, doesn't matter if it's your family, people in your company, I think that pushes you more towards the blue, because you keep feeling that your role is to help them, is to give them advice, is to tell them what to do, because you want them to do better. And I think it makes it more difficult because you keep wanting to tell them. What do you think about that?
You're right. You're absolutely right. I think it is partly that. I also think it's back to what I said before, where through our experiencing in our jobs, we are rewarded, aren't we, for having an idea or speaking up, or the world of work is set up to celebrate results. Clearly, that's important. And I think because I know that I do have ambition and I do have drive and did have this desire as I came through my 30s to have some level of influence and control over my destiny, that almost also makes it perhaps a bit more prominent, because you're trying to prove yourself, and therefore you feel that you need to be the one that speaks the most, probably.
I know, and I think that's true. And I mean, one of the things that I find really shocking in almost any company I could go into, I can't think of one that doesn't do this, to be honest. When you think that you employ people in the company, and it doesn't matter if they're engineers, salespeople, techies, doesn't matter what the heck they are. So they're doing a really good job selling or doing whatever they're engineering or whatever they're doing. And they do so well that their boss says, we're going to promote you to either supervisor, manager, whatever. And they go home Friday as a salesperson, and they come back on Monday as a supervisor or manager. And they seem to think there needs to have been some sort of osmosis over the weekend that's given them the new understanding first, and then skills that says your job isn't the same now. So you come in as suddenly being promoted and thinking, oh my God, I've got to be telling them all what to do now. That's my role, and I've got to make sure I've got all the answers. So And that's typical of every company. You've no idea the people who come through the 3-day program, the PLP, and say, I wish I'd done this years ago.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely crazy because it is different. You see, from everything you're saying, I love the fact you say that you're heavily blue and red. You see, a very good friend and colleague of mine who I absolutely adore, Sherilyn Shackle, she's the founder and chairman of the Marketing Academy. She's absolutely fabulous. And dear Sherilyn, when it was quite early on, I'm going back about 15 years now. She met me and thought everything I was talking about was amazing. And she decided that, oh yeah, got to have some people going through the program. So she started putting people through the program, 1 or 2 at a time. So she was getting all her team going through the program. At the time, she was in recruitment. Anyway, they were all coming through and they were all going back and saying, Sherilyn, you really need to do this. You'd really enjoy it. And she was thinking, no, I know all about leadership. I know how to do this. And eventually she came on it. And like you, she was, oh my God. No wonder they were all coming back saying, you need to do it. And she said it was such a wake-up call. Now, like you, I swear that in her heart, absolutely a leader. Absolutely cared about people. Absolutely a leader in her heart. Everything was coming out of her mouth with straightforward management.
Yep.
And you just don't realize, and you really believe you're doing the best. And I'll share with you. I know that Emma's, not you, Emma, my daughter's listening, who, as you know, is my managing director.
Yeah.
And I tell this story so many times, but I don't know if you struggle with this. I've been teaching this now for a long time. I think that means I'm perfect. Forget it. It's for the birds. You're not. You still screw up. You still make mistakes. And most of all with your children or people who are very close to you. And Emma was going through a challenging time. I think she'd got a mortgage advisor and she was in the middle of buying a house and everything else. And this mortgage advisor was absolute crap, not doing the things that he was meant to be doing. Everything was going tits up. And there was, I think, a chance. She was thinking there's a chance she was going to lose the house. Anyway, she phoned me up and she downloaded all of this about what was going on. Now, instead of doing what I teach, I probably went to it, right, Ems, what you need to do is boom, 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 straight off. And I put the phone down, and you could tell that Ems was getting sort of frustrated. You could hear it down the other end of the phone. Anyway, I put the phone down, and then I thought, God, what have I just done? And I picked up the phone, and I said, Ems, darling, I'm really sorry. I'm sure you know how to deal with this. Forget anything I said. Do you want me to listen? She said, don't worry, Mum. I wasn't going to pay any attention anyway. But you can't help it.
No.
And unless you're perfect or walk on water, I don't think we get it. We get it right a lot more. We're aware much more.
Yep.
And I think that's key. So, God, you've got such an interesting story. I find it fascinating that you've done so many different things. And I think it's from the way you talk, it sounds as though almost all of the time after that initial, I'd like to say, I'll put it politely, but idiot teacher, you've almost followed your instinct. You followed your gut. You followed your heart. So you sort of thought, yeah, okay, that's a bit different, but it sounds about right now. So, okay, I'll do it. And that takes guts, but that's what you're encouraging your children to do, which is lovely.
Yeah.
But just tell me, you went through the PLP. You said that it had quite an impact as you took the top 16 people through. Then actually, as a CEO, committing to saying, I want to become a trainer of this program, which, as you and I know, it's not just about being a trainer. It's about learning to really live it and breathe it so that it really becomes part of who you are. And so it does. So if you take this much from the 3-day, you're going to take this much from that. But it's 10 days. It's 5 days, gap of 1-2 weeks, another 5 days, and then the pilot. That's a heck of a lot of time for anybody. But for a CEO to take that amount of time, That really is quite something. So just tell me, what is it that made you decide to go that extra step?
I mean, I think first and foremost, Paul obviously is there in the background going, I think this would be absolutely fantastic, because, you know, if you and Lara, who's my head of people, get trained, then you can really, as you quite rightly said, you live and breathe it, and then you can roll it out across the organization. I probably was naively, I had no concept of what it was going to be like, if I'm honest. I think I just thought,
oh, don't worry, Paul didn't either. It shook him rigid.
and so I was almost a bit sort of blasé about it, in terms of, I'm sure it'll be fine, and I'm used to standing up in front of people, and all of the things that you probably just do without thinking about. But I think the core driver was probably back to what I said about being here at this business in Ramarketing, is that I am not the expert in the room, and I want to be able to be the best version of myself as a leader in the business. But also, I think, you know, the big part of the whole program is, how many leaders do you actually develop? How many people are we bringing on this journey who can actually then have a fulfilling career and be engaged and motivated and be able to excel? That, you know, I think that probably has come as part of my age as well, where I've gone, actually, now I'm quite comfortable where I am, and I know I need to continue working on myself. But actually, there's amazing people around me who are earlier in their careers. Like, where's the opportunity for them, and how can we leverage or use this program to help them? And I think I've always been quite focused on that, I would say, over the last 6-7 years, as I've started to realize that once you're there, it doesn't have to be about you all the time. So there's that. And I think if my job is to lead well and to set a good example and to support others, then why would I not commit my time to ensuring that is in the best state as it can be? And bearing in mind, I always talk about leadership practice. So I'm a musician as well. And I always think that to be a musician, you have to practice all of the time. And I'm not a professional musician, but I sing at a really decent standard. And you can't just turn up and sing, right? You have to practice all of the time. And leadership is no different. I think it isn't something that you do it and you're done and that's the end of it. And, you know, you're constantly having to refine and change and think differently and adapt to the people around you. So this felt like a really great way to take that next step, because having done it now, the level of depth of understanding you need to have in order to be able to then explain it to others and take them on the journey is on another level compared to the PLP. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, and in going through it and having Tash, who was just such a phenomenal trainer, mentor, you know, support, you realize that it's actually this huge privilege. And if you get it right, it's actually transformational for other people. So it didn't really even enter into my head that about the commitment, about the time. I just thought this is just the right thing to do for me and for our business, to do the work and do the heavy lift. And bear in mind, you know, yes, it is 10 days plus a pilot, but I think it's probably more like 20 for the amount of prep I had to do, you know, even the flip charts, honestly, the pressure, what a good flip chart looks like. Yeah, I mean, I think it is a big commitment, but so worth it.
Do you feel that it changed you?
I think yes, it has changed me, but I also think what it's done is given me a whole nother level of awareness about myself, which, you know, I'm a massive advocate of therapy. And I know Living Leader isn't therapy, but, you know, therapy for me is, and I've been in therapy for a long time. It's about awareness, and it's about finding out about yourself and finding out about why you respond in a certain way or respond to certain things in a certain way. And Living Leader in the focus that it has is very similar in the sense that you do have to look at yourself as well going through the training, as much as you have to think about how you're going to influence others. And we were very lucky, I think. We was only 3 of us in our training, which is phenomenal because we had then very quite personalized support from Tash. But it was emotional. Oh my goodness, it was emotional. It was an emotional journey. But I think that I feel, and I hope that this isn't the wrong thing to say, if it isn't, I would feel that it hasn't landed.
I agree.
I think there does have to be a deeper connection with who you are. And it was like that. And even when I actually delivered my pilot, there were some moments in that which I'm sure the team that came with me on it, where I went, wow, like I didn't think it would have that effect, or I didn't expect that reaction, or and you just have to then embrace it. It's not leadership in the way that we probably have all been told leadership is. We think it's just this add-on when you're in a business. No, this is actually everything. So yeah, it did change me.
It is. I think every one of our trainers, or everybody's been through it, will say that they probably live their life in a slightly different way. And I think it is that getting to know yourself. And I also 100% agree with you. You have to get to an emotional level. This is not something you could learn to deliver. Tick the box, I can now deliver the program. It's not that. Absolutely isn't that. How did you find your first pilot?
I mean, it was I think the run up to it was worse than the delivery of it. It was almost that sort of the anticipation, the responsibility, trying to navigate through the fact that I am the CEO and there are people in the room with me who might look at me in that way and feel they can't be as open and honest. And I think so the run up was hard. And then when I started, I remember starting and thinking, because when you do your training, you run a lesson and then everyone runs their lesson and there's a debrief and there's a bit of time to kind of process. And it suddenly dawned on me on that morning, oh my goodness, I don't know how many it is you have to do in day 1, but I just have to do this now. I've got no time to sit down and go, oh, well, that was okay, wasn't it? And how do you just go bang, bang, bang. So it's like everything, I think, because again, back to the music analogy, I do from time to time get to stand up and sing solos. And there is always this anticipation until you sing those first few notes that everything's going to go wrong. And I know I've learned now that I go into it going, no, I'm going to be brilliant for this audience. And once you've sung the first phrase and for me with Living Leader, it was delivering that first lesson and reading the room and getting a sense of what the team were going to feel like. Then I relaxed. And although it was a lot to get through. I mean, our stories, when we share our stories, I mean, Tasha's in the back of the room and mine went on for nearly 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at her thinking, because once you get going, you can't cut anyone off. You can't, they almost I set the tone, but then they set their own tone. But it was so worth it. Like, it was just so worth it to have that time to hear people to tell their story. And the feedback, when I saw the feedback, was actually that set us up for a really successful 2 days, that 2 hours. And I think I had to take a break in between them. It had gone for so long. I had to take 5 minutes to give everyone a chance to reset. I spoke to Tash, said, don't worry, it'll be worth it. You'll be fine. So yeah, I loved it, like genuinely loved it. And you get to the end and you go, yeah, I know this is quite self-serving, but I have made a difference.
Yeah.
And I think that's fulfilling.
It is. I mean, there's no question. It is. And I nearly always come out of those first 2 days feeling a combination of complete, utter exhaustion and drained and energized. It was this really odd balance of both, of just thinking, gosh, what's happened? So it was always amazing. So it was a very odd sort of dynamic when you finish the day.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. I mean, as you know, we would love to get this program as far as we can, as broadly as we can. Where do you think would be somewhere that could have the biggest impact in our country if we could only get to it.
Well, there's the obvious place, which is, wouldn't it be great if our government actually had some of these skills? That's a really, really tough one, isn't it? I almost feel that I almost feel it needs to be bottom up. You know, you could go, well, I want to get in with a really massive organization, or I want to get in with I don't know, like the government or the public sector or whoever it is. But I actually think, and I know you guys do this really well, it's almost that we need to find those advocates, the people who have done it, who are happy to talk about it, and to almost allow that to carry itself. And I appreciate that's not how you can't run a business purely based on that, but I think it's the advocacy you need from those people who have actually been through it, or who have done the PLP, or who've done the training, to galvanize them even more, to make sure that the conversations are happening and we're talking about it all the time. Because I know you guys have worked with some bigger businesses, haven't you? You've rolled it out across some big players. It's a difficult one to answer, I think. I mean, possibly school. That's the only thing you could think is, where does this fit into our education system?
Well, I've always had a vision that I'd love it to be part of the school curriculum before every child leaves school. But Jesus Christ, it's a bit like pushing the soft and smelly up hell in a blizzard. You know, trying to sort of get in there. It isn't easy. But then, if you get to the young people, the teachers have got to know what the hell they're learning.
Right.
Otherwise, how are they going to support it? Yes, I think it could have an amazing impact. I think so much would be different if we had the schools. It became part of what all teachers did before they became teachers. If you had all young people before they left school, so they became aware of responsibility, of choice, you know, not continue being able to blame this like this, but say, okay, I've got a choice here. I can still remember, this is going back a bit, lovely guy who I used to work with, Leszek Marcinovich, and he became a trainer, and this is quite in the early days, and his son was just going to university, and he phoned him up from university and said he was really struggling with one of his subjects because the lecturer who was teaching it was really bad and everything else, and expected to say, oh dear, you know how often. He said, well, hang on a minute, you've chosen this subject. If that teacher's not working, so how are you going to now learn to get that subject? If you knew there's other things you can do, what are you going to do? Oh, well, I could go and research this and do that. And that. Okay. But it's very easy to say, I can't do that because the teacher's no good. But to have somebody then says, okay, hang on a minute, do you want to do that subject? And if you knew you could find a different way to go about it, how would you go about it? You know, and it's those things. So, you know, it would make such a difference if we could get this out. And the interesting thing is, Ems and I often talk about it. And our biggest strength, no question, is that there's nobody in the world who wouldn't benefit through going through the program.
That's right.
Its biggest weakness is that there's nobody in this world who wouldn't benefit through going through the program. Because how the hell do you market it? You know, it's really, really difficult. It's not easy. But one of the things, and I still haven't really been able to find a way to overcome this. And it's interesting. I always like to know what other people think about how one approaches this. Yes, we have taken this into big corporates. Sometimes we've taken 4,000 people through, and they go down to the level of supervisor. Okay. What about the people underneath that? Who assumes that they're not going to do something?
Yeah.
And there was a company that I won't name, very recently we were working with, but they had drivers who delivered all their products out to the customers. And I joined one of it was a virtual program, the 10-week virtual program. And I will always endeavor to join the program if I can for one of them for 30 minutes or so. And there was somebody there who was a manager of the drivers. And they'd just done, I think it was the week where they'd just been doing push-pull. And he said how important it was that, you needed to be involved. But of course, with the drivers, it had to be different. You had to tell them what to do. And he went all into a great explanation and really believed it about how you could do it. But when it came to that level, you needed to be telling them what to do.
Mm.
And it was really fascinating. There was somebody on the call whose husband had become a driver about a year earlier with that company.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, he's come up with some thoughts and ideas that could make this more efficient. And he keeps trying to talk to people above him and nobody will listen. Now he's given up.
Yeah.
And I thought, why do they stop there? What is it that you can do to make people realize it's not just about managers, it's not just about supervisors, it's about everybody. Those drivers have probably more relationship with the customers than a lot of the people further up. But isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? So how far have you taken it down so far into your organization?
Well, we took the view. So I think the main plan is to roll it out in 2025. So we've done our pilots and we'll make the plans to do that next year. But we took the view when we've done the pilots to mix the teams up. So we had a mix of senior all the way down to perhaps more, I hate to say junior, I say people who are earlier in their careers.
Yeah.
And we mixed the room up. And that's been brilliant because, when I can't remember what the exercise is, I should remember, but where you're asking about, what are the values and what are the behaviors you're seeing and what are the sort of things that are driving that, you do that big exercise and actually you really get warts and all if you've got people from a cross section of the business.
Yeah.
Because if it's just a set of leaders, sometimes you can get caught out believing your own BS. You just think, well, this is the way the world is. And but actually speak to the people who are, and we all fall foul of that, because of the way our jobs work. But it was confronting for me because I obviously then have to hear the things that are really causing an issue for individuals and what they don't like and what they see and the inconsistency. But it was so valuable. And I don't know whether we would have got that level of even debate in the room. They were talking with each other about it. If we'd rolled it out at a level, like it just didn't. So we took that view. And I think I would like to continue to do that, mix people up. We're small enough.
Great. I think that sounds really wise because you're getting people from all different levels sharing different things, and people at the top are sort of going, oh God, I didn't know that they thought like that, or that's what's going on. Or, oops, wow. So it's really convenient. Right, I'm now going to ask you a question that I got asked, completely threw me, I have to say, when I did get asked.
Oh, good.
and I don't mind telling you my answer afterwards. I got asked by a group. They were doing their first 2 days. And I went up and joined them for dinner on the evening of day one. And somebody said to me, right, Pen, you designed the program, you've been teaching it for years. If there's one thing that you could take away that's had the biggest impact for you, what would it be? I have to admit, it completely threw me. I thought, oh, Christ. But anyway, let me ask you that.
Well, I'll tell you what first came to my mind.
Yeah.
If I gave it some more thought, I might say something else.
Yeah.
But it genuinely is appreciation.
So talk a bit about that.
I think that I'll talk in remarketing terms, but working at remarketing is brilliantly challenging, exciting, motivating, but it is hard. And we are very hard on ourselves about quality of product and quality of service and that why did that go wrong and what are we going to do to fix it? Not necessarily even in a finger pointing way, just that's how we're focusing. And I mean, I've seen the master doing this, Paul doing it, and it just, even though you know what's happening, you are so much more receptive to the things that perhaps need a little bit more attention when somebody can sit you down and tell you how brilliant they think you are, or how brilliant that thing was that you did, or how they make you feel. Those things, it just we know this, it's psychology, isn't it? It opens up your mind, and then you get the feedback which might say, but actually, I mean, recently he said to me, I think you need to be a bit more assertive because I'm quite a collaborative thinker. So I tend to want to hear other people's perspectives. He's like, sometimes in a board meeting, you need to be more assertive. But I was totally open to that after he'd given me a big dose of, these are the great things that you do. I struggle to think of anything more impactful. That, yes, there's lots of things about my own behavior, and I think the thing that would follow second would be listening. But again, if yeah, I mean, it's hard, but because all the other things to me feel like they brilliantly support all of that.
Yeah.
But we are human beings at the end of the day, and we're in a working environment, and it can feel very, very challenging at times. If somebody just took a bit of time to tell you that they thought you were great, or you did such a fabulous job with that client, or, look at how they've responded, whatever it is, however it's positioned, it makes everyone's day better. So,
and I think you're right. And when I look back, I feel so sad I didn't do it with my children enough, because I tell them I love them probably every day, and I was always telling them I love them. But I'd made so many mistakes in my life. I thought my role was to make sure they didn't make the same ones. So I spent more time focusing on behaviors I didn't want than behaviors I did want. And I forgot to, I thought them, but I forgot to actually let it come out of my mouth. And I think that's part of the challenge, that we quite often think, oh, that was nice what somebody did, but we don't comment. If it's somebody even in the store that helps you find something, you've lost it, you might think, oh, that's really nice they're doing it, but you don't say, it means a lot to me that you took the trouble to do that. We just, it's crazy. So I promised I'd then share with you what was the first thing that came up for me. And it did change my life. And what changed life for me was give, get.
Yeah.
That was the thing, absolutely changed my life. Because for me, I had no confidence. I couldn't have attended one of my programs, let alone delivered it. My confidence was so bad. And when I got that absolute bullet between the eyes that basically said, why are you thinking about you? Would people like me? Would people think I'd done a good job? Would people give me feedback afterwards, say it was great? It was all about, I was worried about what people would think of me. And control's not inside me.
No.
And what people think of me has nothing to do with me. My reputation is not inside me. And so being able to just focus on, okay, if I knew there's one or two things that I could give to this audience, this group, this person, it absolutely changed my life, give, get. And that's the first thing that came into my mind. And it still is the thing that probably resonates for me the most, even now. Did that have any impact on you, that one?
Absolutely. And it's funny because I think appreciation came to my mind first. But I do think that is quite a pivotal session, isn't it? When you go, it's the question that gets asked, how do you want people to treat you? And then you ask the question, how much control over that do you have? And yes, absolutely, because we were doing the training internally, I was able to use a few of my own stories. Like, I was a bit more comfortable using some of my own stories, and I think I used a singing analogy in that one. But the one that really struck me was, in COVID, we used to do virtual presentations, and you'd have the company on Zoom, and you'd be presenting, and you'd spot that one person who wasn't paying attention, or the two people who were typing, and I'd become fixated on it. Absolutely fixated on the fact that those individuals weren't paying attention. You'd gradually get more and more annoyed that you'd given up your time to do a presentation and they weren't paying attention. And I think when we did the session, I recognized it myself and went, crikey, why am I trying to bother about that? Like, if they've chosen not to pay attention, that's on them. I've got another 60 people who are actually listening. I need to focus my attention on what I'm giving to them. So I do think it has, but maybe it feels more like, it feels a bit more conscious. Like, I have to think about that more. With appreciation, I think I probably now have got into a mindset where I just do it. But I do have to sometimes stop myself and go, what have I got control over here? I just want to be the best version of myself so that I can give what I believe is what I have, the best I can. How those people choose to receive it, how the people in front of me choose to receive it, I can do nothing about that. I always use the Daily Mail as a test. Shouldn't probably say that, but I always think if I did something and I put it on front of it went on the front of the Daily Mail or a tabloid, could I defend my position? I always use that and go, well, that's what I'm giving then. I'm giving what I believe is right. But if somebody in front of me says that they don't think it's right, I have to check myself, but I won't necessarily change what I believe is, what I should be doing or can do or choose to do. So you're right, it has. But I think I could probably now run through all of my lessons and go, oh, I'm that one. Oh, I'm that one.
I know, because they all sort of blend together in one way. It's just that one stuff, and I think the other sort of places that give guess is kind of key is how many people in meetings, especially if they're more junior, don't have the courage to challenge or ask a really important question because they're more concerned about what people will think of them. And yet it could be a turning point in the decision, but they hold back. And so because they're worried about what people will think of them, and just being able to let go of all of that and think, no. The other thing that for me, which is really darn key, and I think is what happens more and more as you go through the journey, is having the courage to be authentic. And that can take courage. It's not always easy. And I think that is, for me, it's the most important characteristic of leadership.
Yeah, so true. And I think I found that easier as I've got older, because I think, and particularly as a woman, we had a really interesting discussion about, when we talk about persona character, and we had a really, really interesting discussion because I had a workforce split of ages, and I asked them whenever they felt they needed to be in their persona, and a couple of the younger ones said, well, we're almost society, there's this unconscious expectation that we behave a certain way, we handle ourselves a certain way. So sometimes when we're put into a difficult client situation, or we're in front of somebody who's significantly older than us, we feel we have to behave away from who we actually are. And I think then you've got age and gender in this, where you've got almost like a societal expectation that you will be a certain way. Now, as I've got older and gone through the menopause and, come out the other side and basically gone, F it, I now don't care what people think in the sense of what society expects from me. It's actually been liberating from that perspective, where I do, of course, I have to think about what I say and communicate well and all that kind of thing, but I'm so much more comfortable in my own skin to be able to deliver a message in a way that is or be who I am. Yes, of course, there's always persona, because if I'm in a board meeting, there's an element of me that has to probably be a bit more, I can't crack jokes and swear. It's well, I probably could, to be fair, I think around that table, but I think it's something we have to be aware of, is age and gender actually have a huge impact on that ability to be authentic, because we have created this construct around those people that they should behave a certain way. So, but you're right, you're absolutely right, because we see through it, don't we? We see through inauthenticity.
Yeah. And the best leaders I know, Paul's a perfect example, of course, but there's many others I know, and they're just amazing. This is who they are. And once you've worked for them, you never want to work for anybody else. But
no,
Emma, I cannot believe it. An hour has literally flown by. Can't thank you enough for giving your time. It's meant a lot to us. I've immensely enjoyed the conversation. I'm still in somewhat shock at that teacher. I almost can't believe a teacher saying that, but hey ho. But my God, you've made an amazing life and found your own way. And it's good to hear you're so happy where you are. And I very much look forward to meeting you physically.
Yes, likewise, and it has been an absolute pleasure to meet you, Penny, for many reasons. But yeah, hopefully see you soon in the new year.
It'd be great. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.